The Hoop Genius podcast is brought to you by NBA 2K24. Hit the link in the description right now to get your copy of the game. Enjoy the episode. You know the vibes. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast with myself, Mooncy, the one and only BJ Armstrong. And so nice, we had to get him twice because you guys showed so much crazy love. All the fans online, all the media. Salute to you guys. We posted. Mr. Scott Perry is back with us today. BJ, Scott, how you guys doing?
Hey! I'm just happy to be here with Mr. Scott Perry. He's so hot. Let me calm him down. He's hot right now. He's coming in. Hey, he's coming in hot. You know, I'm real name, no gimmicks. Now we got to give him a nickname after one show. We got to give him a nickname.
You got something cooking, Scott?
I didn't know that Mo could drop lines so well. You know, it's so nice. We're gonna do it twice, right? Okay. That's an old school line now.
I'm an old school G. You ain't heard nothing yet, my brother. You know, usually the fellas don't hear me drop lines, but that's a whole nother story. But we're gonna talk some NBA. We're gonna start this week right. We're gonna get it cracking. The NBA season started just under a week ago, and a few different things have happened around the league. You know, we've seen some teams start off red hot. We've seen some teams start off a little bit cold. One of those teams that started off very cold is the Memphis Grizzlies, who, as we're recording this, are currently 0-3. But help is on the way because a friend of the show, good friend of the show, Mr. Bismack Biyombo, has just signed in Memphis. Steven Adams obviously out for the season, and Brandon Clark, with his Achilles injury, still no timetable for his return. BJ, talk us through this. You know, it seems like an obvious decision of why they signed him, but just break it down for any of our newer fans.
Well, it came about very quickly, and Zach Kleiman and the staff down there, as Scott can share with you, when you have injuries and you have a season-ending injury like to Steven Adams, things happen and progress very quickly. So they identified Bismack Biyombo as a player, a center who could address their need to give them a level of physicality that they want to play with. And, you know, Coach Jenkins and their whole staff they were very aggressive and trying to get Bismack to get down there, and it worked out for everyone involved. And I know he's really excited, you know, with your guy, Marcus Smart, so we can add another defensive-minded player to the mix and really give them a player who could fill in and do and provide what Steven Adams did so well for them, right? A level of physicality, especially on the defensive end, some rim protection, and set some screens for their guards, especially when
Ja Morant gets back.
When Ja Morant gets back. So I think that's gonna work for them. So it seems like a good fit.
That's how long we've been doing the podcast. Me and BJ can finish each other's sentences now. That's crazy, right? So, you know, Scott, you came on the show last week. Everyone's loving the insight you give from your front office perspective, obviously most recently with the Knicks. But I wanted to get your take on this and just share some insight from that GM level of when you have players with season-ending injuries, right? Do you already have like a list of free agents prepared for each position in case this situation would occur? Or do you kind of react to the situation there and then and see who you can go out and get?
Absolutely. You have to have a list of players ready to go, if you will, when, you know, you get an unfortunate injury that costs one of your players an entire season or an extended period of time. That is part of our job.
And how long is that list? 3 names, 5 names? How far deep does it go?
It's probably longer than that. But in terms of the candidates that you really would seriously consider bringing in, who are NBA caliber players at this stage of the game, it all depends on the positions. Maybe 2, 3 per position that you're going to really vet, even further talk about and decide who you want to bring in to your building. You know, one thing I'd add to what BJ has talked about with Bismack was I worked with Bismack. We signed him in Orlando some years ago. And, you know, one of the things, and I'm sure that's probably factored into Memphis's thinking, is the character of the man. And, you know, Memphis is a team that's, you know, expected to win and do well this year, even though, you know, Ja is going to be out for the first 25 games. Their expectation is to win and advance and make a deep playoff run. So you bring someone in like Bismack, who's high character, who's all about winning. He's not going there worrying about any rebound numbers, any block numbers, any steal numbers. He's worried about the most important thing for him and that organization, and that's winning basketball games. So he's going to do, whether he's asked to play 20, 30 minutes or he doesn't play but 5 minutes, whatever it is, he's going to give it his all. And that factors in, again, when you're talking about trying to win, getting players who have those kind of intangibles. To me, it's not as much about necessarily what his points per game average is or whatever the case may be. How's he going to fit into the existing team and to the existing personalities that we have on that basketball team? So I think he's going to be a good fit, and I'm pulling for him because he's one of the classiest individuals that I've worked with during my 23 years in the league.
Hey, Scott, I got a question for you. Just something, when things come up and we want to share your expertise in a recent, there's always things that happen in the NBA, as you know. This James Harden situation has been fascinating. And a lot of people
BJ just switching lanes already.
Well, I'm not switching lanes. I mean, we have an NBA.
Smoke.
Yeah, we have a true insider, and Mo hears me say this all the time, Scott. Roster construction is a real talent. And we have someone who has 20 years plus experience in understanding, when you watch the game, you see the game, but there's a real art to it. Now you have a situation like a James Harden, and I want to get a insider's perspective on this situation and what that would look like from an executive's viewpoint. Like, talk me through, Scott, how possibly you would look at this situation if, you were the general manager of, the Philadelphia 76ers.
I think it starts at the very beginning, guys. Whenever you sign someone, draft someone, trade for someone to bring them into your building, I think it's incumbent upon leadership, and I mean the leadership, whether president, general manager, coach, and head coach, to be able to establish a direct, honest, and open communication with all of your players, not just a select few, not just the guys who are quote unquote the stars, but 1 through 15, that you got to have a policy that your doors open, that if a player has anything that's bothering him, he needs to be able to come and talk to you. Because if something is bothering me, I'm going to want to go talk to that player. And, there's a saying I like to say all the time, we can agree to disagree sometime. But I think when you treat people fairly and honestly, even when they may not like what you have to say from time to time, but as long as you're consistent and honest and upfront with them, they will respect that. And that's what has been my experience throughout my entire life, really, but for sure my entire 36 years in basketball, 13 as a college coach and 23 as in the NBA. That was something that I always held dear to me, was the relationships. Sometimes you hear about executives, not wanting to get too close to players or because you're going to have to do some, you may have to trade them one day, or they may be benched one day. But you can't be afraid of that. In my opinion, it makes it easier to deliver tougher news when I got a stronger relationship with someone. And so I think that's what's, I know there's a history there in Philadelphia between Darryl and James Harden. I don't, because they work together in Houston. I don't know what their day-to-day relationship has been like over time. So that's, obviously something that, James feels, strongly that something went awry. I haven't heard much from Darryl what he believes. But I think if I was to be parachuted in there today and tasked with trying to take that over, I'd have to get a sit down with James, and we'd have to be communicating on a daily basis so that we both, it's a tough situation, but let's figure out man to man how we can make this situation work, at least in the short term, until we can figure out something that's amenable to both of us, whether that be a trade or even him staying the year and finishing out the season. So that's how I look at the situation.
So with what we've seen, the two Daryl Morey and James Harden were obviously very close. I mean, when James Harden got traded to the Philadelphia 76ers, Daryl Morey was literally waiting for him on the runway to hug him when he got off the plane. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen a relationship between a general manager and a player quite that close. In fact, I don't even think when I'm flying back to the UK, none of my friends are waiting for me on the runway. Even girls are not waiting for me on the runway. Only airport security is waiting for me on the runway when I'm coming back from California. You know what I'm talking about. But I digress. They were obviously very close. James Harden on his last contract took somewhat of a pay cut to facilitate the signing of PJ Tucker and, you know, some other players to extend the depth of the Sixers. And what James Harden came out this summer and said is, quote, word for word, Daryl Morey is a liar. I will not play for an organization that employs Daryl Morey. And what has been believed, I don't know the insides and outsides because I've not spoken to either party, but that James Harden was promised an extension, a max extension, and he was not given it after the season. And he feels like he was lied to. Now, my question is this. If you're Joel Embiid, I understand you want to sit back and wait to see how this all figures out before you make your next move. But if your teammate, James Harden, has come along and said, I will not play for an organization that employs Daryl Morey. And as Joel Embiid, you're in your prime, you're trying to go get a championship. Would you not simply just go to the ownership group and say, fire Daryl Morey because we're going to need James Harden on this run to the championship? All that contract stuff we can figure out after the season. But I'm in my prime. I've been injured a lot in my career. I don't get that many chances to make a deep run. You know, the East, there's the Celtics and the Bucks. Injuries could happen to either of them, and then it's wide open for us. If you're Joel Embiid, would you not do that? Instead, what have we seen? Season opener against Milwaukee. He's walking up and down. He's showing a lack of effort on defense. I don't know if you guys saw that touch pass where it was like he was playing volleyball. He just batted the ball away. That led to a transition three-pointer for Jay Crowder. And then in the game against, was it the Raptors the other night? While the team was warming up on the court, he's in the locker room tweeting about the boxing. So at some point in all of this, my question is, does Joel Embiid not have some responsibility? Because as the face of the franchise, he has some leverage to be able to go to ownership and say, look, I don't care what their dispute is. I need James playing, or I need a trade so that we can get more depth or other players in our squad. Does he not have that responsibility? What's your take on that?
I think that's a very tough dynamic, to put it forthright and straightforward. Joel Embiid's first responsibility is to make sure Joel Embiid is ready to play 82 games if possible.
Well, this is game 3 and he's resting.
Exactly right. Yeah, you know,
he is literally resting tonight's game unless he changes his mind.
Okay, I hadn't seen that, you know, but look, the guy was the MVP last year. And he's one of the tremendous stars in this league. I don't pretend to know his level of frustration with the situation. I think what you're asking and what you're saying would really depend on that. If he really is committed and wants to stay to Philadelphia and wants to see it work out, well, I think we're in that age of players where that could happen, you know, that he has a relationship with ownership and saying, hey, we got to figure something else out here, because I want to see this, you know, I want to see James on the court helping us win, if that's how it feels. So I think, but again, he's got to, the best way that he can have a voice though, and even though you say he's resting today, is how he's going to go out there and perform each and every day. Because at the end, you know, at the end of the day, he still is under contract, has a number of years left on his contract. He is paid to be great on a nightly basis. I think the young man has enough pride in his own performance to want to go out and do that. And, you know, I hate to weigh too much in the early season basketball, especially with a big fella like Joel Embiid. You know, training camps are shorter now. Preseason's only 4 games. So if you saw him walking up down the court a couple of times, I don't know if that means he was disgruntled versus he's not in shape yet to run. Like to see him run, and as I've watched the number of games this first week, you do see some rust because I think the level of conditioning is not the same what we were used to. And I know, when BJ played, when they were, first 20 days were 2-a-days and they had 8 preseason games. By the time they had games, they had worked through all the soreness. They had worked through all of the, getting tired. They were getting their second win. So when the regular season opened up, they looked in mid-season form. Well, I think now, because again, to reiterate the point, you're starting so much sooner. Camp is, not even a week. And really, yeah. And you have
that's right.
And so we're expecting this high level of conditioning. And I know a lot of guys trained in the off season, but look, let's be real. Historically, big guys, big men, they don't play a lot of basketball in the off season. So, I don't know Joel Embiid's routine in the summer, just how much he worked out when he started ramping up for training camp. But you could tell he's going to need some time, I think, like a lot of the athletes do.
Well, I know. And I just want to clarify here, the time we're recording this podcast, Joel Embiid is questionable under rest, and James Harden remains out for tonight's game because it's the second night of a back-to-back. They played last night in Toronto, but it is the home season opener. So I'm sure Philly fans, if he does rest the game, will be pretty disappointed. But sorry, BJ, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just say, no matter what happens moving forward with this James Harden situation, it's going to be a hot topic, and everything is going to be dissected because we have not one, but we have 2 elite players, right? 2 former, MVPs. And we know one decision is going to probably have an impact or affect another. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. However, Joel Embiid, if he doesn't say anything, we're just going to run with that. If he says something, what does that really mean? And whatever Joel Embiid does, because he is one of the elite trollers in the NBA. Okay. A year or 2 ago, that would have been really funny. Joel is in the locker room. Ha ha. That's just Joel. Now it's like, well, he's not interested. What does that mean? What is he saying? So the media is going to have fun with this. Now, I don't know how Joel is going to handle it. And hopefully it won't be a distraction. However, in the media in Philadelphia, on the national level, it's going to play itself out, and it's going to be a hot topic. And I don't think the Sixers organization is going to be able to avoid it. Certainly, the players involved, and at somehow, as it always happens, it will be resolved at some point.
Well, one player who's not distracted by any of this is BJ. Do you remember my pick for most improved player?
Yeah, what did you say?
Tyrese Maxey.
Oh, yes.
31, 8, and 4 in the opener. He had 34, 7, and 6 last night. He's looking like an all-star. So my question is, given that he's playing at this level as the primary guard, if there is a way to get James Harden back playing for the Sixers, do you really want to disrupt that? And how will that dynamic be? Because now you're going to throw in a guy who takes up the ball most of the time he's on the court.
Well, I want to say this. Yeah, I want to say this. Playing couch now executive. One of the things I would love to see now, in the absence of James Harden, is now I get a chance to look in real time to see what I may need to replace him. And that way, I'm going to give the ball to Tyrese Maxey to see who and what he's going to be. Because he's always been interesting to me, Mo. And as you know, I've been saying this now for over a year. I think Tyrese Maxey was the key last year. And Tyrese Maxey, again, is going to be the key because of his ability to play downhill as a lead guard in this league. So even though James Harden isn't playing, okay, you can't take this away from James Harden. He led the league last year in assists as the point guard of that team. And he went through about a 15 or 20 game stretch last year, Mo, where he was playing exceptionally well. You could have argued that the Sixers were the best team in the Eastern Conference for about 15 to 20 games when he played. But now, if we know that we're going to move forward without James Harden, let's say that is the decision, I get a chance now to give, what's the name
Tyrese
of
Maxey.
Tyrese Maxey, the basketball. Give him the ball. Let him see who he is, what he is, and then you try to fill that in. If in fact you know that James Harden isn't coming back.
Scott, what do you look at when you see this roster now? If it's confirmed that James Harden isn't going to play for them again, and you're not going to get a star player in return for James Harden, which I think is what Daryl Morey is holding out for. You know, he took his time previously when he traded Ben Simmons, and it looks like he's going to do the same thing again. But if you're looking at just kind of role players that you want, what kind of guys would you be looking at? In what positions, what kind of roles would they be playing on the court to surround Embiid and Maxey and even Tobias Harris?
I think they need a wing guy with some size who can be a versatile defender, score a little bit, but he's not going to be relied upon to be your heavy scorer. You mentioned Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, 1-2, and Tobias Harris, who's a true pro. You know, I think with Nick Nurse and the way he's going to run his offense, he's going to be able to give you 18 a night because just how he plays in a pretty efficient 18 a night. So I just think you need some versatility defensively. You can always add another guy who can maybe make a shot from 3-point range. To BJ's point, with a guy like Maxey who can get downhill, who's going to draw a lot of help defense. So to have an additional player out there who can knock down an open shot would be very helpful to their team. But, you know, look, Philadelphia is a very tough town. I think those guys, those versatile wing type guys who are tough, highly competitive, fit in that building, fit with that team, fit with that community, and could be helpful to them. I mean, obviously, I think that would be more helpful than having a player who's not playing and who really doesn't want to be there right now. So you've got to just make the best of it that you can right now. And from all signs, it just appears to me that you just got one team out there who is expressed interest in him. Now, does that change? I'm not sure. But as of right now, you know, that one team being the Clippers, you know, if I'm them, I think they're handling it right. Just kind of sitting back and knowing that this, as each day goes by, nobody else appears on the map in terms of being interested in trading for James Harden. Either they're going to have to send him there or have a guy not play much at all for him this year. And you definitely don't want that to happen if you're Philadelphia.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out with the James Harden saga, and if even anything happens, you know, because they're under no obligation to trade him. They can just make him sit till the end of the season. And there's the CBA rules that he has to report to the team. Otherwise, he won't be able to sign a professional basketball contract anywhere else. And the Sixers can block that from happening. So I think at some point he's either going to have to play because it doesn't look like anyone's willing to give up much of anything. I do think, you know, the one thing that Daryl Morey has in his head is, you know, injuries happen all the time, and not to prey on a team who has an injured player, but, you know, if there is a team out there who needs a lead guard or a ball handler or someone who can dime the ball to their teammates, he may just be waiting for situations like that to unfold where he can then use that leverage to go and ship him off elsewhere. But around the rest of the NBA, as we've gotten started this week, you know, they go ahead.
One little point to that, though. You know, that can be a little dangerous when you're waiting on someone to get hurt or someone, you know, to need a point guard. Because you got to remember, too, with James Harden, he's not just, you know, your run-of-the-mill talent. Here's a guy who's been a multi-year all-star, who's always had the ball in his hands. And he's in a contract year. So all those things factor in when you're thinking about acquiring a guy like this. So that limits the teams right away. And I don't know, even if somebody, you know, unless they lose a guy who plays a lot like him, and how many teams have that? Not many. I don't know that much more opens up because, again, I talked about it in the beginning of the show. So when you're trying to win, man, fitting personalities together, along with the talent meshing, they're equally important because you got to always remember they don't come separate in your door. The talent doesn't come in as one piece and the person comes in as another and you can separate them. No, it's wrapped up into that one person. And you got to figure that out.
Well, it's staggering to me that the NBA's assist leader from last season is not wanted by any of the 29 other teams. But I do hear Saudi Arabia is really nice at this time of year. So maybe for next season, maybe, we're going to be in Riyadh. We have him on as a guest. I don't know. I'm the money's good over there, James. I'm just saying. I can make some calls for you. I can talk to my people out there. Who knows? But elsewhere around the NBA, the Knicks fans were going crazy when you were on the podcast last week, Scott. So I wanted to get your take on their season so far. They've started 1-2. They lost to the Celtics in their season opener. They got the win against the Hawks, but then they fell to the Pelicans. What's been your first impressions from watching this team this season, and how have you felt about them?
When I watched them in the opening game against the Celtics, one thing stood out in a positive vein, even though they did not win the game. You could sense some familiarity with the guys. This group had been together now for a year. Jalen Brunson was no longer new. This is his second year coming in. The starting five is the same starting five. So I saw some sharing of the basketball that was very encouraging, very positive. And so that has to continue to be something that they get better at because they know each other better this year. And they only have one new player, really. Basically, they switched out Obi Toppin for Dante DiVincenzo. Now, I think they're smaller in the second unit as a result of that change out. So how they're going to work through that. How much is Josh Hart going to play back up for versus RJ Barrett going to play back up for? Those will be things to look out for moving forward. They go on and get anytime you get a road win in the NBA, it's big. Thought they shot the ball very well, played well in that game to get that win, and then went on a back-to-back to a Pelicans team that early on, even though they didn't look as good in the preseason, but since the regular season has started, I think they're really starting to come together. And, Zion Williamson is that force of nature, and that was their home opener, I believe. So those games are always tough to play when you go to play someone in their home opener. But I'm going to be watching closely to see, just again, how that familiarity, how much that's going to help them this year. And then also want to see the level of improvement. RJ Barrett is just 23 years old now. So what kind of jump is he going to make? Jalen Brunson had a fantastic year, first year in New York. I mean, you couldn't have written a better script for him or the team. But now, this will be his first year now, even though it's the second year, but his first year of being kind of the main guy on the scouting report. And BJ can tell you, that's different. Last year coming over from Dallas, Luka Doncic was the man. Well, when he came over in the point guard position last year, so people didn't really know, how he was going to do in that role, how they should defend him in that role. Again, like I said, he exploded, played terrific. But now, all this season, he's going to be more than likely the first name teams are talking about how we want to defend and how we want to stop. So how does he respond to that? Can Mitchell Robinson continue to grow a little more offensively? I mean, he's gotten, he had a tough first game with getting in foul trouble, but he's rebounding the ball extremely well, protecting the rim extremely well. But can they help him develop a move around the basket where he can be more of an offensive threat, not just on offensive rebounds, but where you can throw the ball to him occasionally and make a play? That'll be important as well. And then, I obviously don't want to leave out Julius Randle. What sticks out with me with Julius and watching him these first few games, because again, he has been the focal point of a lot of opposing defenses really since he's been in New York. His patience level looks better to me knowing Julius. He wasn't forcing as many things the minutes that I've watched him play thus far. He's been willing to make the easier pass. And ultimately, that's just going to help him become more efficient. I know that's something he's always wanted to do, become he's a sponge when it comes to wanting to get better, wanting to learn, wanting to grow his game. And I think this is a great opportunity for him this year to grow his game from a perspective of being more efficient, being able to still score those 24 points a night, maybe on a shot or two less, a turnover or two a game less. Then I think that can help this ball club win more games.
And I mean, we have to say this in New York. Over the years, whether you played there as a visitor or you've had friends and you've worked there comes with a level of expectations when you play in New York City. Okay. And that's the elephant in the room in playing in New York, right? It's kind of one of those things you have to understand that when you come to New York. Last year was fabulous. I mean, arguably you had a chance to get to the conference finals just a year ago. And every year in New York, it comes with expectations, especially this year. So I think this team, even though they have the same roster, even though same familiarity with one another, however, the expectations now, when you come into the Garden, they expect to win now. And that to me is probably, New York may be the one of the most difficult places to play because of the expectations that you have there. There's no other place in the country like New York City. All right. There's no other team that has that level of pressure. And one thing I've always respected about the fans is they are knowledgeable. Okay. This is a very elite fan base. So I think this is going to be interesting to see how this team performs this year because of the expectations, because of the success they've had. Jalen Brunson had arguably when you say a career year, he had a career year. Julius Randle has put together now a couple, I think he's made 2 or 3 All-Star appearances now since his arrival there in New York. And now we're looking for RJ and Mitchell Robertson and other pieces to step up, to elevate, to meet those expectations. And, if there's one thing that stood out to me is I always look at Coach Thibodeau and defensively what he's doing. That's where he has made his bread and butter. And, I think I was watching the Atlanta game. I mean, the score was like 121 to 126 or something. Okay. And I was like, okay, I know Coach Tibbs. That's one thing. If it's one thing, he's been on our show. Defense is that's his thing. So that to me has stood out, especially early in the season. And we'll see how this plays out. But I think there's a lot of expectations on this team. I like their team. I like what they do. However, I'm going to be looking for them to really meet what the fan base is all saying. I think right now we're probably saying they're a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference this year. If you were to ask, the experts, and, now we weigh in on that. So it's going to be interesting to see how they perform and how they respond to this year's expectations.
Yeah, just to go back to Scott's point of familiarity, the swap in Obi Toppin and Dante DiVincenzo essentially in the roster. It's great because Dante already has the familiarity from Villanova, playing with Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson. But what I wanted to ask, to BJ's other point about the fan base, how much does that affect your job when you were working in the Knicks front office versus when you were working in other stops around the league? Because we saw in recent years Knicks fans going absolutely crazy. I don't know if you guys, because I know you guys ain't up on the TikToks and the Instagrams like I am, but you see the fans outside screaming bing bong and all those viral videos. Does that filter through to the front office? Do you guys keep an eye on, like, is it that much more pressure than everywhere else you worked in the league?
Look, you obviously know it because, again, and BJ made the point, and I said this and I learned it very quickly going to New York. Not only are they extremely passionate, but they are very knowledgeable basketball base.
Yes.
And in my first couple of years there, I lived in the city. So anytime I've run into a lot of New Yorkers, and they had no problem stopping me and telling me exactly see what's going on. So, and I enjoyed it. I really did, and I really embraced that about that place because didn't quite have that anywhere else. Not to say that there's not, there's extremely passionate fans. I worked in Detroit a long time, and that's my hometown. But that's I knew a lot of people there, I knew everybody, but just strangers that I didn't know that just felt like they were, they're really a part of it. And so yeah, you hear all of the quote unquote noise and commentary, if you will. I mean, you can't help but hear it, see it, feel it. But at the end of the day, you can't allow it to deter you from doing your job and doing what you feel is best to build a basketball team. And so that's what personally I always felt, and I always thought, and I would just pivot in my thinking, just do what I believe is going to be the right thing for this team to help this team get better, because we all want to win. The New York fan base has been they've been dying for a champion since 1973. It was the 50 years,
and they're gonna let you know about it wherever you go. They're gonna let you know about it.
They're gonna let you know about it. And that's what Clyde and those guys are still big stars today,
right?
Because they are the last champion, and that means something, and people are just thirsting for that to happen. So, hopefully for them, this season could be another building block towards getting there. And to BJ's point, expectations will be high. We went to the second round. We lost to the eventual Eastern Conference champion in the Miami Heat. So, and I'm sure the guys themselves are going to have high expectations of themselves. That's what people. I'm sure they realize it, but they should at least. You got a lot of competitive guys on that basketball team that want to and believe in themselves, but want to go as far as they can. So I'm sure they're all going to be working as hard as they can to get there. And it's going to be interesting watching the journey.
Now, we got to talk about Detroit, seeing as we got both of you guys on the show. We got to talk about how they've started off real impressive start of season. Cade Cunningham returning from his injury and playing sensational basketball. Jalen Duren, absolutely electric. He's younger than most rookies that were drafted this year, and yet he's already had a year experience in the league. He, of course, came to Detroit through that trade involving Kemba Walker and the New York Knicks when you were there. I believe, was that to make some cap space for the Jalen Brunson signing? I can't remember. But how excited are you guys for Detroit basketball this season, given the first couple of games that you've seen, picked up a couple of wins? And I'm enjoying watching them. They're one of my favorite league pass teams right now.
Well, I'll go first. And,
because if you let BJ go, he's never going to stop.
Yeah, no, I know, but yeah, I want them to get back where I can hear Mason through the television yelling Detroit basketball. They live all the way. But no, I really like what they're doing in terms of the talent that they brought into that building. Love Jalen Duren. You mentioned him. Love him coming out in the draft. Personally, was a big fan of his. Cade Cunningham, and BJ and I have talked a lot about him.
Yes, we have.
We've had our back and forth debates on Cade. But Cade has good size. He's got a good basketball IQ, good feel for how to play. And the debate has never been about, is the kid talented or not? The debate has always been, okay, is he the number one guy for a team? And so that's, what you will learn this year, really, to be honest with you, I think, if he's going to be that. So I love the kid, Asua Thompson, that they drafted this year. But I remember going to see him play at the Overtime Elite. See him down in Atlanta. He and his brother, superior athletes.
I heard someone say, I don't know if you'll like this or not, but Osar Thompson is a wing version of Ben Wallace with what he's been doing so far, being able to contribute on the boards, blocking shot. I don't know if you like that comparison, because I know that's a personal connection for you.
I don't want to jump that quickly to him. Being a 4-time defensive player of the year.
That's Big Ben. I agree with you, Scott. I
don't want Big Ben calling me up after he sees this podcast saying, Scott P, what are you talking about?
I'm just saying what I heard.
But I think it's clear already that he is willing to take on the challenge to match up with anybody, especially on the perimeter. But I mean, he'll value you inside if he gets switched on to a bigger person defensively. So he has the makings to become an elite defender in this league. I think it's no secret he needs to improve his perimeter shooting, but I don't worry about that at this early stage of the game, because he's going to get better with that with time and reps. All my sources tell me how much he loves being in the gym and how much he loves to work. So I think that he's a very, he has a very bright future. I think the one to watch for them this year, and again, I was a big fan of his when he was coming out as well too, is Jay Ivey. Jay Ivey, another elite athlete at the guard position. He's I don't know what you want to call him, 1.5.
Well, they've got him as the sixth man right now. So
but he started all year last year. But how he develops this year under Monty Williams would be important too. Because the thing about it, if they all hit and become good, it's going to be hard to retain them all.
Why are you talking about the business of basketball? Let's start
exactly.
Why you go?
But that's a good problem to have. Though.
Yes, a great problem to have.
That's a good problem to have. So I hope for Troy Weaver and the Pistons and Tom Gores and that group that is the problem that they're faced with, a couple of years from now. So, but I'm excited to watch them. I enjoy watching them play because they're not going to cheat you on effort and energy, and they're still making their way around the track. 1-2 years around the track, and then you watch out. You better get them now while they're still trying to get some experience, because I think they're definitely up and coming team.
Well, I have to chime in on my Detroit Pistons. Our Detroit Pistons. Scott Perry and I grew up.
Yeah, your Detroit Pistons.
Yeah. These are now since Scott Perry and Joe Dumars and these guys. You went to 6. Was it 6 conference finals? You guys went there.
Went to six straight conference
finals. Mo, and for our fan base, without a max player. A max player. Okay. That's working, Mo. Okay, because Mo wants to be a GM. Mo, when you are able to achieve that, think about that, Mo. They went to 6 straight conference finals, 2 NBA finals. They win a championship without a max player in a small market. Now that's working. Okay, now that's really working. That team had an identity. Clearly, they had a lot of talent because you got to have talent, but they had an identity, and their identity was toughness. That team was tough, led by Ben Wallace on the defensive end, Rasheed Wallace, Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, so forth and so on. This is the first time, Scott, that I think I can say this. They have their bigs, in particular, Isaiah Stewart. We refer to him now as Beef Stew. And then Jalen Duren. We've given him a new nickname, Scott. He's the Sledgehammer. He's the big we've given him a new nickname. Okay, we have an identity now in Detroit for the first time. Those two bigs play a brand of basketball that refers back to the yesterday era. They are big, they're physical, and they're gonna fight for every play.
Did you see Beef Stew offering out? Who was he offering out to a fight? But it was like
Washington.
Yeah, the most casual. Because usually when you want to fight someone, you're like, we're gonna go outside. He just looks at him and goes,
Yeah, let's go.
Like,
and they get into now those two, and then this young kid. Okay, this kid, Osir Thompson.
mm-hmm.
You know what I love about him, Scott, is you alluded to it. He's not a great shooter or a good shooter right now, but he contributes to the game right now and plays a winning brand of basketball by all of the little things. That kid is going to he's a terrific defender. He looks like he's going to be an all NBA defensive player, maybe even this year at some point, because he takes on an assignment every single game. And we don't know about Cade and some of the other guys, Jaden Ivey and those guys. However, they have an identity now. And that's what I love about them. And those two, for the first time, is a brand of basketball that you say, that's a Piston brand of basketball. I think that's going to be fun for them because they have three guys where defensively, that's kind of their game. Jalen Duren, Beef Stew, and this kid Thompson. And then if you can combine the other athletes and figure out how to score and do some other things, I think that gives them a chance. So I'm really excited about this team over their first 3 games. I know it's early, but I just love the physicality in which they bring. I mean, they've been in a tussle 3 straight games. I mean, there's been a little skirmish every game, and I love it. I love it.
That when you're the underdog.
Oh, man, I love it.
See, that's spoken like a true Detroit. Confrontation. They referred to our team, when I was working there with Joe Dumars. That's who we were. Win, lose, or draw, you were going to be in for a battle. You're going to be in the ice tub after the game.
Tell them about the 2-game rule in Detroit, Scott. What's the 2-game rule?
The 2-game rule?
The 2-game rule. The game, and then it's the fight. Now, we're not going to lose both of them.
Oh, yeah. No, and so Beef Stew, because I know that Ben has been around the organization in the mentor capacity. And I know he's worked with Beef Stew since he's come there because there's a few similarities there. And so that's has been awesome. And I think that's been smart on the Pistons part. One thing I was going to add about Osir Thompson, as we talk about players and evaluation, but BJ alluded to this point. But when guys coming out as a rookie, it's very rare that a rookie is going to be asked to have the ball in his hands and making plays and making decisions. So a particular skill you may hear us refer to from time to time is, well, this player can play without the basketball. And so that's Osir Thompson right now. We've already seen on one side of the ball defensively, he's already major impactful. Now he's just got to learn all the different guys he's playing against, some of the nuances, some of the different sets and things that he's going to see to figure it out, to become that elite defender. But offensively, again, he doesn't need to pound it to get shots. He can cut to the rim. You can throw him lobs. He can finish every now and then in transition. So you don't need to involve him, run stuff for him right now to be impactful for you on that end. And that is huge to me. And it's not talked about enough sometimes when young players are coming into the league. Because again, it's that rare breed that's going to have a chance to have the ball in his hands as a 19, 20-year-old rookie that is shooting 18, 20 shots a game. That's just not going to happen much. And so kudos to him. And I think they see that, recognize that in him, and that's going to really speed up, I think, his growth and development as a player.
Well, we're starting another week here, week 2 in the NBA. I want to know from each of you one player and one team that you're going to be keeping an eye on to see how they play this week. Who are you focusing in on this week in the NBA? BJ?
Well, I'm going to look at the Sacramento Kings because I think they are a top 4 team in the Western Conference, and I think the Western Conference is pretty good. But I'm going to be looking at De'Aaron Fox and the Sacramento Kings because I thought they lost a critical game for them against the Golden State Warriors this past week. I thought that was a big game for them just psychologically to know that they can beat the Golden State Warriors, especially after last year's defeat in the playoffs, even though they had home court advantage. I thought psychologically they needed that game, even though it's an early game in the season.
And it was a lapse. Like when was it Wiggins who drived and they helped off Wiggins to leave Steph Curry open from 3 to hit that big shot at the end. Like
that was in preseason. That was in
was that the preseason?
Preseason,
okay.
yes.
See, but so many games already. Yeah. I'm getting them mixed up.
They lost at home in the regular season.
Yeah.
And Golden State beat them pretty good. So I think the Sacramento Kings right now, because they got a little taste of success last year. I mean, Scott worked there, and they really made a turn last year. I mean, they had a terrific season as well. Like the Bean, they gave an identity. They're the fastest playing offensive team in the league. Great guard play. They've added some players, Sabonis in a big trade, And all of a sudden now, I thought that would, games like this can haunt you, because they needed that. They needed that just for their, psychologically, they need to know that they can beat that team, especially at home. And so that's a team I'm going to be looking out for to see how they respond because of all the success and all of the anticipation for this year. But I thought that was a letdown, and I'm going to see how they respond. And their best player, I think, is going to have to carry them and kind of get them to fight through this adversity, even though it's this early in the season.
You bring up the Kings, and I'm going to mention another team in a second, but I want to add to something there with the Kings. We talked about this with New York as well. Expectations.
Mm-hmm.
There's major expectations for the Kings now. Again, I worked out there a short time. Was there when we drafted De'Aaron Fox. And that community, the Kings are it. They are the only game in town. They're the only major league sports team there. People love their Kings. And so the expectation for them is that they're going to go further. And so now, how does that team handle going to arenas now? Because, look, they had one for 15 years or so. I think, I forget, it's been over a decade, I know, since they last made the playoffs. So now you make it in a good fashion. They were the third seed last year. And so they can't take the foot off the gas. And now when they're going into arenas, they're going to even people are going to be testing them out to see is last year for real. Now I think Mike, you got to give Mike Brown a tremendous amount of credit.
Amazing job.
Yeah, yes. He did a great job coaching that basketball team. But the team I want to watch, and again, I've always wanted to look at the champions when they come back.
Oh, they're looking pretty good. Scott, they're looking pretty good.
They are looking very good the first week. And I think, again, if I had to pick a favorite today, I probably would look towards them. I want to see, though, what I want to see from this team, and they had a couple key losses in Jeff Green and Bruce Brown. I want to see which guys are going to step up off of that bench. And I also want to see the collective, just how hungry they are. See, they've been a good team for, since Jokic has been there for the most part. They've been a competitive basketball team, playoff basketball team. But now when they come to your arena, they're more than that now. They're the defending world champions. So now they're getting everybody's best shot every single night. The world champion Nuggets are coming into the building. And BJ knows this because he was part of a team that won 3 straight. That inner drive of each of the players, how important is it to get number 2 to each of those players? Sometimes, because sometimes guys can be like, oh, I got my NBA championship. I got the monkey off my back. Do I need to, do I have to go all in?
I think the media is helping them.
I think early on, they look like they're all focused in that right direction. But I want to continue kind of monitoring them in that type of space.
Good call.
Yeah, the media is helping them because they didn't even feature the Nuggets in their season opening promo graphic. But right. just to allude to your point, the one player that I was going to say I'm keeping an eye on this week is Peyton Watson on the Denver Nuggets, the 21-year-old. He had a great game just this second that finished against the OKC Thunder. You know, they're very concerned about losing Bruce Brown. Well, I don't think the Nuggets were concerned, but the rest of the league were saying that they've gotten worse. But the way he's been playing so far, if he can keep this up, that's going to be a very interesting development to watch. That's what I'm going to keep an eye on. And also the Dallas Mavericks, because Luka Doncic has just been going crazy. That I think has kind of flown under the radar a little bit. He's been hitting some ridiculous shots and doing what he does. And they haven't lost a game yet so far as we're recording this show. So that's what we're going to be looking at this week. We hope you guys are staying locked into the Hoop Genius podcast. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your favorite podcast from. Scott's going to be back with us for more. Don't worry. Don't worry, he's part of the family now. He ain't going nowhere. He's going to be here. BJ's going to be here every day. I'm going to be here every day. So make sure you subscribe, because this is the best basketball podcast in the world. Yeah, I said it. I know you guys are all listening. We'll be back for more. In the meantime, get buckets.